So what really triggered the shootings at Columbine High School? The accumulated aggression of the children, which they couldn't cope with, or the media hype surrounding descriptions of high-profile terrorist attacks, containing specific destructive images and attitudes that incite action? What affected the children's psyche? And who is truly responsible for children becoming mass murderers? Now, these dates on the calendar, April 19th and 20, have become days of deep mourning for the entire American nation, marked by the shadow of three horrifying tragedies: the siege in Waco, the Oklahoma City bombing, and the mass shooting at Columbine High School. The events of those days, which claimed numerous human lives, have become memorable milestones in American history. They have been the source of numerous changes in both the political and social landscape of the country.
But what unites all three tragedies is not just their dates and their impact on America, but also that they are all part of the strategy of global anti-cultism and the hidden force behind it.
They have become long-lasting anchor events that have triggered numerous processes, which continue to significantly influence the current situation in the country to this day. I will talk about this in more detail later, and also, using the specific example of the tragedy in Waco, I will show you how the enemy, through its network of global anti-cultism, orchestrates such events, and how you can identify its hidden hand amidst what may seem like chaos or accidental coincidence of circumstances.
Mechanisms of artificial provocation of school shooting incidents by anti-cult representatives.
All these events, besides being acts of terrorism, subsequently became powerful info-terrorist attacks, which in turn spawned new crimes. Later, through their allies in the mass media, representatives of anti-cultism launched a PR campaign to give worldwide publicity to the events at Columbine. Numerous high-profile articles were published, films were made, and books were written detailing the day of the attack down to what the boys had for breakfast that morning. All of this ultimately created a romanticized image of the shooters, evoking both sympathy and even admiration.
Ain't no VTech shit or Columbine, but
I look like Bret Hart mixed with Dylan Klebo. Maybe what the pro.
I get this look up for you. Dude, I want you to know, like...
Shots fired. Several shots fired.
Based on the events at Columbine High School and the interests surrounding the shooters' personalities, entire communities of their admirers formed. Known as the Columbiners, fan groups emerged on social media, which ultimately became known as the Columbine movement. For some reason, competent authorities were slow to combat the spread of this clearly destructive information among teenagers and to stop the activities of such groups, despite their apparent efforts to popularize and romanticize school shootings and their perpetrators. As a result, what do we have now? Nowadays, school shootings and Columbine have become interchangeable terms. The word Columbine is now used to describe all crimes carried out in a similar manner. This marked the unofficial beginning of the era of school shootings. Who created this heroicized image of Columbine and why? Why did the authorities and intelligence agencies allow it to spread so widely? Is this simply negligence and irresponsibility, or intentional criminal inaction? If it is believed that one of the key reasons for new school shootings is an uncontrolled imitation of Columbine, then why was information popularizing this event allowed to spread so widely? If reports of these events did not contain hidden manipulations that incited action, this information would not have been so actively duplicated, picked up by other children, and would not have generated new shooters. It is evident that the Columbine cult was created intentionally. At its core, this is an act of informational terrorism that spawns more terrorist attacks. Who benefits from conducting acts of informational terrorism of this scale? Only the representatives of anti-cultism and the force behind them. It is the representatives of anti-cultism who subtly glorify the perpetrators of these attacks through the media. Using manipulative psychological techniques, they implant the desired image into people's subconscious minds, promoting the spread of information that contains hidden destructive messages.
The legacy of Columbine. Ever since that mayhem 15 years ago, we've seen more and more of these mass shootings, many by troubled young men inspired by the Columbine killers.
Police say Yee is obsessed with the Columbine High School massacre. David, tomorrow is the 25th anniversary of Columbine. Authorities clearly taking no chances.
This way, they search for new copycats. They sow the seeds of destruction and wait for new sprouts to emerge. When a school shooting occurs in any country, and the media worldwide starts broadcasting information about it, what happens to the people exposed to this information? Thousands of children and teenagers start to try on the image of the perpetrator, contemplating, what would I do if I were him? They think about how they would act towards their classmates in school or peers in college or university. Even many rational adults, listening to these stories in the media, start imagining how they might carry out such an act. In doing so, the human mind unwittingly identifies potential victims, those who have wronged them in the past or undervalued them. Thousands think about it, and a few actually turn their fantasies into reality. This is deliberate psychological manipulation. Many of you might wonder, if representatives of anti-cultism are behind school shootings, how do they manage to control the shooters remotely? They aren't physically holding their hands. The answer is simple. They don't need to physically hold anyone's hand to make them commit a mass shooting. They only need to control their consciousness. Naturally, the next question arises. If they use such precise and refined manipulative techniques, why do they not work on everyone? What is the key factor that opens the door for the implantation of a destructive program into the subconscious of teenagers, driving them to enact such horrific scenarios? To understand the true nature of what is happening, let's delve into the details of how representatives of anti-cultism use methods of covert programming to influence a person's subconscious to commit a school shooting. How do they manage to code a teenager to execute their malicious will?
Method of puzzle piece coding. First, representatives of anti-cultism select a region where, according to their goals and objectives, it will be strategically advantageous to create a school shooting incident. The organization and planning of such a terrorist act in the chosen region happen long before the actual event, usually from 1 to 3 years, depending on the significance and importance of the event for them. The coding of a teenager to carry out an armed attack is done remotely, using the method of subliminal information embedding through mass media and the internet. To create a new school shooting, they use a method of puzzle piece coding, that is, a method of covert manipulation by directing multiple waves of information coding. Each wave individually contains specific embedded messages that, like puzzle pieces, come together in the depths of the potential shooter's subconscious. Only when these pieces combine do they activate the program to commit mass murder. As a result of this activation, the individual goes through with the crime, while to an observer, it appears as if it was their personal decision. No one met with them, directly incited them, or helped them prepare. They didn't even discuss the topic with anyone. In reality, they act as a biorobot, guided by a skilled hand to carry out a premeditated criminal plan. This segmentation of manipulative embeds into several waves of information delivery is intentional and serves the purpose of precise targeting. Since a school shooting requires one, at most 2 perpetrators, the waves of information coding affect thousands of people. Some of these people may even feel an impulse to act on the commands, but not everyone can cross the line into committing mass murder. Therefore, to narrow down the target zone and activate a suitable potential shooter, a cross-sectional information attack is conducted. It consists of several information deliveries, each containing specific embeds that can bypass the critical control of the conscious mind and penetrate directly into the subconscious. Once there, These embeds come together like a puzzle to form a cohesive picture of the future crime. This image becomes a dominant intrusive thought, pushing the individual towards committing mass murder. When planning the next school shooting, representatives of anti-cultism first study the demographics of the target school, their interests, and popular internet and media resources among them. Then, by placing materials on these media resources, considering trends in the teenage environment, they launch multiple waves of information coding that contain hidden embeds. Moreover, these infected messages are typically spaced out over time, meaning they don't necessarily need to be released into the information space simultaneously. The key is that they all superpose in the perception of a specific individual. Their combination in the potential shooter's subconscious triggers the command to execute the implanted program. The initial information coding attacks have a broad range of impact. The final wave of the attack and additional corrective measures are carried out directly within the target school. These give the start command to the shooter. Representatives of anti-cultism first launch preparatory waves of information coding, followed by targeting and activating waves. This series of precautionary measures allows them to control the exact number of perpetrators of a terrorist attack and the quality of its execution. The first preparatory wave, which serves as the foundation for the subsequent layering of all puzzle piece embeds into a single picture, is the glorification of previous school shooting perpetrators. The primary factor that representatives of anti-cultism exploit here is the human desire for fame.
Therefore, all the narratives glorifying shooters, implanted by representatives of anti-cultism, exploit a person's desire for popularity and widespread attention. It doesn't matter how the information about the shooters is spread. It could be condemning their actions or justifying them, a biographical sketch, or a dramatization of events. Anything goes. The critical aspect is the news coverage and the manipulative message embedded in it. Thus, an image of the criminal is created, surrounded by an aura of fame and admiration, despite the wrongfulness of their actions. What does a teenager see when they encounter this information? They see that an ordinary student, just like them, who felt undervalued, gained worldwide fame with a single act. Now, the top popular media write about them, celebrities talk about them, and they become a sort of idol for others. It is precisely the desire to become famous, the thirst for fame, that serves as the fertile ground in which the seeds of evil sown by real terrorists take root, provoking children to commit crimes.
My name is Nick, and I'm going to be the next school shooter of 2018. My goal is at least 20 people with an AR-15 and a couple tracer rounds.
She is infatuated with Columbine's school shooting. Police say she was armed and extremely dangerous.
Well, I will be. Columbine, Virginia Tech, none of them will beat me. I'll kill them all.
Remember Columbine!
He was arrested. BBC News investigation spanning the country uncovered chilling evidence, video diaries. Here's that Minnesota suspect talking to police in May.
My number one idol is Eric Harris.
An era of active shooter events really began with Columbine.
Thus, the first implant penetrates the subconscious of the potential shooter. The notion that the most important purpose in life is to gain fame and recognition, and without this, life is meaningless. The deep-seated subconscious fear of living an obscure life pushes the teenager toward committing the crime. If you look at the profiles of shooters from this perspective, and their explanations for their actions, you will clearly see that the desire to become famous is the one common trait they all share. Here is a crucial point. If the glorified image of the shooter did not exist, school shootings would cease to be possible, because without this foundational base, the rest of the program for carrying out the act would not have the necessary support to be executed.